I want you to think about a really um, highly specific, but probably very familiar feeling.
Oh, I bet I know where this is going.
Yeah. So you send a text message to a friend or, maybe a partner or even your boss, and you can see the read receipt. The little notification is right there on the screen.
They've definitely seen it.
Right. They've seen it, but they don't reply. Minutes go by, then maybe an hour. And suddenly you feel this literal physical spike of panic right in your chest.
Your breathing gets shallow.
Exactly. Your mind starts racing, and it just jumps immediately to the absolute worst case scenario. You start wondering, like, what did I do wrong? Are they mad at me? Is this whole relationship over?
Over a single text message.
Yes, over a text message, a completely minor, everyday social friction. And I mean, it sounds totally irrational when you say it out loud, but in that moment, your heart is pounding and your body is reacting like you are in actual physical life or death danger.
It's a profound visceral reaction, and it happens because, well, biologically speaking, the primitive parts of your brain literally cannot tell the difference between a silence notification and, like, a predator circling your camp.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And that literal physical spike of panic is exactly what we're decoding today. For this deep dive, we are looking at a brilliant paper from Stephanie Underwood. It's titled The Relational Safety Framework, a safety appraisal model of relational trauma.
It is such a fascinating piece of work.
It really is. And our mission today is to fundamentally rewrite the rules on why our brains treat these everyday relationship dynamics like survival situations. We're going to completely reframe how you view trauma, change how you look at your own seemingly irrational personality quirks, and ultimately break down the actual neurobiology of how we heal.
Yeah, that's the real core of it.
Right. And to help synthesize all this dense science, I've got our resident expert here to translate it into something that will make you view your own relational patterns not as, psychological flaws, but as brilliant evolutionary survival strategies.
The beauty of Underwood's framework is that it completely removes the shame from our reactions. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to understand the precise mechanics of why your nervous system makes the choices it does.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand why the brain treats a deleted text message as a mortal threat, we have to start by rethinking the whole concept of trauma entirely.
Right.
I feel like the pop culture definition of trauma is usually like a specific event, a car accident, a natural disaster, just a discrete moment in time where everything went catastrophically wrong.
Yeah, that traditional clinical view really focuses on an acute stressor, something that just shatters your assumptions about safety in an instant. But Underwood's paper shifts our focus to something much more insidious, really, relational trauma.
And that's different from the car accident model.
Very different. Relational trauma isn't a single explosive event. It is the water you swim in. It's an ongoing, diffuse threat that's embedded right into your interpersonal environment, typically during your earliest developmental years.
So, like, what does that actually look like day to day?
Well, it looks like unpredictability. It looks like chronic emotional unavailability, or maybe a caregiver whose mood basically dictates the entire emotional weather of the house. It's a caregiving environment that fundamentally just does not feel safe on a daily basis.
And to understand why a moody caregiver is literally traumatizing to a developing brain, we have to look at the mechanics of human evolution, right? Like John Bowlby's foundational work on attachment theory really laid the groundwork here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because for a developing human infant, survival has nothing to do with having sharp claws or, outrunning a lion.
Right. A human infant is entirely helpless. I mean, it can't regulate its own body temperature, it can't feed itself, it definitely can't fight. Therefore, an infant's survival is entirely mediated through relational bonds.
Proximity is everything.
Exactly. Proximity to a caregiver equals literal survival. So if that bond is threatened, whether that's through rejection, abandonment, or honestly just extreme inconsistency, the infant's nervous system does not register that as just a sad, emotional event.
Right, it's not just feeling lonely.
No, it registers it as a critical threat to its biological existence. Death is on the line, essentially.
And this isn't just an abstract metaphor about feeling hurt. I mean, the paper brings up this landmark 2004 study by Eisenberger and Lieberman that proves just how hardwired this is into our biology.
Oh, the cyberball study. That is just a brilliant piece of social neuroscience.
Can you walk us through how they set that up?
Sure. So they placed participants inside an fMRI scanner, which is essentially this giant, loud, magnetic tube that tracks blood flow in the brain, and they had them play a virtual ball-tossing game on a screen.
Just a simple video game?
Right. And the participants believed they were playing with two other real people connected to the network. At first, everyone is tossing the digital ball back and forth, but eventually the game is rigged, so the other two players start excluding the participant.
They just stop throwing them the ball.
Exactly. They just ice them out of the game.
It is the most manufactured,
Yeah.
trivial form of social rejection imaginable. Like you're being left out of a video game by literal strangers.
I know it sounds ridiculous, yet the brain scans revealed something astonishing. When the participants were excluded, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex lit up
And why is that specific area so important?
because that is the exact same neural region that processes the distress of physical injury.
Wow.
Yeah. The brain's core threat detection circuitry was triggered by a digital snub. It proves that interpersonal disconnection is biologically consequential. To your brain, the pain of a broken arm and the pain of being socially ostracized are functionally identical. They both ring the exact same alarm bell.
Which perfectly explains the anatomy of our reactions today. The subcortical pathway in our brain, which is basically this primitive, lightning-fast neural superhighway that completely bypasses our logical thinking prefrontal cortex. It's just constantly scanning our environment.
It never turns off.
Right. And it prioritizes speed over precision because of a concept called the asymmetrical cost of error.
Yes, the asymmetrical cost of error is basically the ultimate evolutionary math equation.
Let's use an example. So let's say you are at a dinner party and your subcortical pathway detects a slight shift in a friend's tone of voice.
Okay.
If it triggers a false alarm like making you think you're being rejected when you aren't, the cost is just that you feel awkward and embarrassed for an hour.
Right. It's uncomfortable, but you live.
But what if it fails to detect a real threat? What if you're actually being cast out of the safety of your social group and you do nothing to repair it?
Mm-hmm.
Historically speaking, isolation meant death by starvation or predation.
Exactly. A false alarm is embarrassing, but a missed alarm is deadly.
Dead.
So the nervous system will always choose the false alarm. It is an evolutionary feature, it is not a bug. When someone you care about is emotionally unavailable, your body is operating precisely as evolution designed it to.
It's just doing its job.
Yes. It appraises the environment, it detects a shift in the interpersonal bond, and it floods you with adrenaline, signaling, warning, survival resources are withdrawing, act now.
So if the brain is this hypervigilant security algorithm prioritizing lightning-fast reactions, it obviously can't sit there and logically analyze every single social interaction from scratch, right?
Yeah.
It has to be using shortcuts.
Oh, it absolutely relies on shortcuts. Which brings us to a massive paradigm shift in cognitive science called predictive processing.
I love this concept.
It's mind-blowing. You have to remember, the human brain is sealed inside a dark, silent skull. It has no direct access to the outside world. It only receives electrical signals.
Right, it's just locked in a box.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't passively wait for explicit evidence of danger to react. It acts as a prediction machine. It continuously generates probabilistic predictions about what is going to happen next in the outside world based entirely on the data it collected from your past experiences.
I think the best way to visualize this is like the predictive text on your smartphone.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, so if you text the phrase, I am so 100 times, and 99 times you follow it with the word tired, your phone is going to autocomplete tired before you even type the letter T.
It already knows where you're going.
Right. And the brain is doing the exact same thing with our relationships. It takes your entire history, runs the math, and auto-completes your partner's behavior.
That is exactly how early maladaptive schemas operate.
And those are usually referred to as EMS, right?
Yes, EMS. Historically, therapy has treated these schemas as abstract cognitive distortions, just like bad beliefs you carry around, like thinking you are fundamentally unlovable or just expecting people to abandon you.
Just a negative mindset.
Right, but Underwood completely reconceptualizes them. They are not just bad thoughts. They are biological predictive threat structures encoded deep into your neural circuitry.
So it's physical.
Completely physical. If you grew up in a home where love was highly conditional, or maybe a parent's mood turned on a dime, your brain statistically expects threat. Chaos was the baseline data entered into your predictive text. So these structures actively bias your perception in real time.
So if my predictive structure expects rejection, and my partner is just sitting quietly on the couch after a long day at work, my brain doesn't see a tired person.
No, it doesn't.
It takes that ambiguous cue quietness and auto-completes it as danger. Like, they're quiet, that means they're pulling away, which means I'm going to be abandoned, which means I am in danger.
The predictive model completely overrides objective reality. And here's the mechanism that changes everything about how we understand ourselves. The physiology precedes the meaning making.
Wait, I want to pause and make sure everyone listening just caught that, because this reverses everything we assume about how our own minds work.
It really does.
We think we get angry or sad and then feel our heart race.
Yeah.
So you're saying the body reacts first?
Always. Your nervous system detects the ambiguous cue. The quiet partner references the predictive threat structure from your childhood and instantly initiates a physiological stress response. Your chest tightens, your cortisol spikes, your stomach drops.
And then the brain tries to catch up.
Exactly. It is only after that massive physiological shift occurs that your brain's higher cortical regions jump in, look at your racing heart, and try to invent a narrative to explain why you feel terrible. Your brain literally makes up a story. My heart is pounding and I feel panic, therefore my partner must be mad at me.
Wow.
Yeah, the meaning making, the whole argument you start with them is just your brain's desperate attempt to justify the bodily state that was already triggered by a past prediction.
Wait, I have to push back on this.
Go for it.
If my brain is fundamentally just running a downloaded probability from like 1995 and overlaying it onto my current relationship, how do we ever trust our own alarm system? Like, if I'm hallucinating threats based on my childhood, how do I know if my current partner is actually toxic, or if I'm just projecting my past onto them? Should I just be ignoring my gut instincts entirely?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your gut instinct is incredibly valid. It's just valid for a different time zone.
A different time zone. I like that.
Yes. Predictive threat structures are not inherently broken. When they were formed, they were highly accurate, mathematically sound approximations of your early unsafe environment.
So they worked.
They worked perfectly. If you grew up around unpredictable caregivers, expecting sudden rejection was statistically correct. It kept you alert. It kept you alive. The issue isn't that your alarm system is broken. The issue is that the predictive model has outlived its original context.
Right, you're not in that house anymore.
Exactly. You are applying a brilliant survival strategy from a dangerous past to a relationship in the present day. You have to learn to ask yourself, is this alarm reacting to the data in the room right now or the data from 20 years ago?
And if the brain is predicting a threat, the body has to actually do something about it, right?
Right.
It can't just sit there in a state of panic. It has to act to survive, which completely changes how we should look at our own bad habits and relationship patterns.
Oh, it radically changes how we view attachment styles. I
Right.
mean, if you follow this topic, you already know the pop psychology labels. You're anxious, you're avoidant, you're disorganized.
Right. People put them in their dating profiles now, like astrological signs or Myers-Briggs types, like,
Yeah.
I'm an avoidant attacher. That's just who I am.
The Relational Safety Framework shreds that idea entirely. They aren't fixed personality traits at all.
They're not identities.
No, they are adaptive regulatory strategies. They are dynamic, moment-to-moment behaviors that your nervous system mobilizes to manage anticipated threats and maintain safety. They are actions, not static traits.
Let's look at how the nervous system calculates the math for these strategies.
Yeah.
Like with a hyperactivating strategy, which is what we loosely call anxious attachment, the nervous system is basically turning up the volume.
Right. Clinging, demanding attention, over-communicating.
Yeah. And that strategy developed because the early environment provided safety, but inconsistently. The nervous system learned that to get the absolute minimum amount of co-regulation required to survive, you have to make a lot of noise. You have to stay constantly vigilant to force the caregiver to stay engaged.
Conversely, look at the deactivating strategy or avoidant attachment. This emerges in contexts where proximity to others historically caused an emotional or physical cost.
Like reaching out and getting pushed away.
Exactly. If reaching out for comfort was historically met with criticism, punishment, or coldness, the nervous system learns a completely different equation. It learns that seeking connection is actually the threat.
Wow.
So the safest, most biologically sound strategy is to shut down attachment needs, manufacture distance, and regulate your nervous system completely alone.
Which explains some incredibly relatable everyday behaviors. Like, have you ever been sitting next to a partner, everything is fine, and suddenly the sound of their breathing or the way they are chewing their food becomes so unbearably annoying that you want to leave the room?
Oh, the sudden disgust.
Yes, you aren't actually annoyed by the chewing. Your nervous system detected too much intimacy, felt threatened by the proximity, and actively manufactured disgust to force you to create physical distance and return to safety.
That is exactly the kind of mechanism we're talking about. And then you have disorganized strategies which occur when the caregiver is simultaneously the source of safety and the source of the threat.
That sounds like an impossible situation.
It really is. The biological drive screams, go to the caregiver to survive, but the predictive threat model screams, the caregiver is dangerous. The nervous system gets caught in a biological paradox, resulting in chaotic push-pull behaviors because there is literally no coherent strategy that ensures safety.
So what does this all mean? It means your attachment style is like an outdated GPS navigation system. It is aggressively, relentlessly routing you away from a bridge that collapsed in 1998, and as a result, it is driving you miles into the wilderness today.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
The GPS isn't broken, right? It's just operating on an old map. You aren't fundamentally flawed for pulling away or clinging to your partner. You just haven't realized the landscape has changed.
It completely removes the pathology from our behavior. I want you to consider the ways you pull away when things get intimate, or the ways you panic when a partner asks for a night to themselves. Look at those behaviors as incredibly clever adaptations your nervous system built to protect you. They worked. They got you to where you are today.
But the landscape has changed, and driving miles into the wilderness every time your partner gets quiet is, frankly, exhausting.
Deeply exhausting.
Which brings us to the critical final piece of this deep dive. If these predictive models are biologically hardwired into our neural circuitry, how do we actually change the map?
This is where the framework explains why so much traditional self-help just fails.
Like journaling or reading books.
Right. Reading a book about attachment theory or sitting alone in your room having pure cognitive insight, like knowing you have an anxious pattern and intellectually understanding why you do it, that does absolutely nothing to update the nervous system's predictive model.
Because knowing your GPS is using an old map doesn't magically download the new software.
Exactly.
You can intellectualize it all day. You can tell yourself, I know my partner loves me. I know they're just busy at work. But your heart is still racing and your palms are still sweating.
Because predictive systems are deeply stubborn, they will actively warp new information to fit the old models. To physically alter the model, you need a mechanism called inhibitory learning, which occurs through relational disconfirmation.
Let's explain the actual neurobiology of inhibitory learning, because it's not just about erasing the past, is it?
No, not at all. You cannot delete a neural pathway. You cannot erase the memory or the biological imprint of being hurt. Inhibitory learning means that when you expect a threat-like rejection, but you encounter safety instead, repeatedly, your brain is forced to build a brand new competing neural pathway.
So you're building a new road.
Right. And as this new pathway thickens with repeated safe experiences, it physically blocks or inhibits the electrical signals of the old fear pathway.
Your relational disconfirmation is the real-world experience that forces the brain to build that new pathway. It relies on the brain experiencing what they call a prediction error.
Yes. Your predictive model expects criticism, but your partner offers attunement. You expect to be abandoned after an argument, but your partner stays in the room and initiates repair.
It breaks the pattern.
Exactly. The nervous system registers the input and says, wait, this data does not match my prediction. That prediction error is the catalyst. But for the brain to actually release the neuroplastic chemicals required to build that new pathway, the disconfirming experiences have to meet very specific conditions.
All right, it's not enough for it to just happen once.
No, it must be highly consistent. It must be contingent on your specific needs. And, most importantly, the experience of safety must be tolerable.
Tolerable? That sounds kind of counterintuitive. How can safety be intolerable?
We have to look at interoceptive load. Interoception is your brain's perception of your body's internal state. Your heart rate, your respiration, your visceral sensations.
Okay, so feeling what's happening inside.
Right. If someone who is biologically adapted to extreme isolation is suddenly bombarded with intense, suffocating affection, the sensory data floods their system. The interoceptive load spikes.
It's too much, too fast.
Exactly. The brain essentially says, this is way too much unexpected data, the system is overheating, abort, and it rejects the affection as a threat. The safety has to be manageable. It has to be predictable. Only when the interoceptive load remains stable will the nervous system let its guard down enough to actually update the prediction.
So if updating these biological models requires actual real-world experiences of safety and prediction errors generated by another person, you literally cannot heal relational trauma in isolation. You can't just meditate your way out of an attachment wound.
What's fascinating here is how explicit the science is on this. Because the trauma was formed in connection, it can only be healed in connection.
Hmm?
Early maladaptive schemas encode expectations about relationships.
Right.
You cannot disprove a relationship expectation by yourself on a yoga mat. You need external relational input that actively contradicts the expectation.
You need a co-regulatory system. You need another human nervous system.
Whether that is a highly attuned therapeutic relationship with a counselor, a safe, consistent romantic partnership, or even a deeply trusted friendship, you need another nervous system to provide those prediction errors. You cannot think your way into safety. You have to experience it repeatedly until the new neural pathway is thicker than the old one.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by removing the shame from our reactions, moving from seeing our relational distress as a personality defect to understanding it as a lightning-fast biological safety appraisal system.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. We explored how our brains are predictive text engines, guessing the future based on the traumas of the past. We reframed our attachment behaviors, the clinging, the withdrawing, the sudden disgust, as brilliant dynamic survival strategies forged in unsafe environments.
Strategies that kept you alive.
Exactly. And we've fundamentally shifted the goal of healing. It isn't about erasing the past. It's about using safe, repeated relational disconfirmation to build new neural pathways that inhibit our old fears.
It is a deeply hopeful framework, grounded in the reality of our neurobiology. It proves that change is mechanically possible, but it demands patience, and it absolutely demands connection.
Which brings us to the end of our dive. But before we go, I know you have one final concept you want to throw out there, something for everyone to chew on regarding these predictive models.
Yes, this raises an important question. If we accept that our relational schemas are fundamentally biological threat models built to keep us alive, what happens when two people with entirely conflicting threat models try to build a life together?
Oh, wow.
Imagine a relationship where one nervous system finds safety entirely in distance and the other nervous system finds safety only in close proximity. When those two predictive structures collide in a living room, how do two human nervous systems negotiate whose prediction of reality is actually true?
That is a phenomenal question to leave off on, and it perfectly frames the invisible biological war happening in living rooms all over the world. Thank you for walking us through this. As you go about your week, I encourage you to simply observe your own subcortical alarm bells out in the wild. Notice the physical sensation when your predictive text kicks in. And the next time a message is left on read and your heart starts pounding, take a breath, thank your nervous system for doing its job to keep you alive, and gently remind yourself that you are no longer in the environment that required that map. Thanks for joining this deep dive. Catch you next time.